Welcome to the Organizational Transformation Kung Fu Podcast with your hosts, Sandi and Jennifer Long.
All right.
Okay. So welcome to this podcast, Organizational Transformation Kung Fu. This is our first live and in-person in the same business center together within our 39, 40 podcasts that we've done in the past.
That's great.
I'm really super pleased to be here. And we've had a wonderful couple of days in New York City to prepare for this podcast. So I'm Sandi and I'm here from Satori Consulting in Toronto. And I'm here with my friend,
Jen Long from Own Up in Denver, Colorado. And we're both here in New York City. Yes. So we do know each other. It's not just this gag we have about getting online together.
That's right. So we have, like I said, spent a couple of really good days of really good food, really good restaurants, really good discussions about leadership.
Yes.
And we're excited here today to talk about leadership.
Leadership at the top.
Leadership
right?
at the top and the importance.
Yeah. One of the issues that we're dealing with, because executives, obviously coaching the executives at the top of the team, but also we find ourselves doing a lot of development for their staffs, right? Their director levels and their management levels within the organization. And a lot of times the investment money goes into high potential programs, goes into let's develop future leaders, let's develop the leadership that's up and coming in the organization. And what we find is that the investment isn't getting made in the top team itself necessarily. Mm-hmm. And that is a challenge for a lot of reasons, but that it's something that companies really should be looking at initially, because the landscape of business, pandemic, all of it is changed. And what is the top team doing to invest in their own learning and their own shift to be able to lead effectively within the context of what's happening today, and actually being able to demonstrate to the up and coming leaders what leadership should be looking like, right? Mm-hmm. That walking the talk.
So let's talk a little bit about sort of how we got here, right? So functionally, leaders are moved up, right? And so we assume once you hit a certain plateau, you have all the skills and the capabilities and the competencies to be a strong leader, which may be true, but we have to also look at it in the confines of leadership team. Right. And is the team holistic in the competencies in which it brings forward? And that's sort of where it falls down. So we bring these teams together. We assume that they have the competencies. We assume they share one leadership brain, and then all the money. Then so we need to develop our people. We need to develop our people and really lose sight of themselves.
Yeah, and it's the discussion is always an interesting one, because they can see where the organization has gaps, and they can see, relative to their own execution and performance and what needs to happen. But the reflection internally isn't necessarily there, right? It's the whole Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there understanding. And it just really becomes the impact of a leader who isn't learning can be huge, right? So what are some of the things we're finding relative to when leaders aren't open to their own, they're not self-aware enough to know what they're what they need to be doing?
Well, I think one of the first and foremost thing is that if there's lack of clarity on the direction of the strategic plan or strategy, right? So when they're not having those conversations, it's like, how do we know if we're moving forward, if we're moving the organization forward, and if we're not stopping to have those conversations? That's the most important thing that the leadership team is going to be doing. And we're doing a lot of strategy work, which the execution of it is often very poor. I think having those conversations at the top level about the why, and is it just that we can't execute on it? It isn't just that we can't execute, but why? What are the gaps in terms of in our team in order to ensure that gets done?
Right. Number one thing, right, that leadership teams really kind of struggle with is this emotional intelligence, this psychological safety. So when we talk about leadership learning, leadership development is self-development. It's better understanding about who you are, what you're strong in, what you're not strong in. really understanding what your insecurities are, not just you as a person, but you as a leader. Where do you feel like, where are you trying to hide? Oh God, I'm not clear on, or I don't understand, right? I can't get to good, hard conversations around strategy, around decisions, around especially tough decisions as your business is growing or shrinking. How to table the really important issues, right? It's that gets stymied because I'm more worried about not showing up insecure. I've made it to this level. Yeah. I should be competent. And to be vulnerable at the top is probably one of the hardest asks that I don't think leaders really face head on.
And I think that whole adage of fake it till you make it, it only takes you so far. Right. And so if you are still faking it and you're sitting at an executive table, you sort of need to then sit back and do that introspection and think about your leadership style. And I also think the other, and I'm curious on your perspective on this, is like, is it the top leader's job to make sure that these conversations are being had? Or is it everybody's sort of incumbent upon everybody to say, ho, we need to stop. We need to think we're not doing well. Is it because we don't have the skills?
Yeah, is it us? Yeah. The first question should be, we're not doing well. Is it us? Yeah. And what are we doing or not doing that's creating this for the organization? Because it's so easy to look at middle managers and say, they're the frozen middle or they're the whatever.
Point fingers everywhere else.
Yeah. Or it's all the other circumstances, when really the first question should be a self-examination. And I think it's both and. I think it's the top, right? President of the organization, whoever the top person is, it's their responsibility. But it's also, if you're going to run like a team, and this, I always say when I'm doing leadership development, I was like, heroic leadership, business is too complex, right? It's really a team effort. Yeah. And there's not always just one person who's going to make a business go. It's really a group of people that are going to make it happen. And while it should be team driven and team led, the president or the leader does have the obligation to set the tone.
They do. Yeah. But I don't think we need to wait for that person to give the A-OK to have a vulnerable conversation, right? If they're not emotionally equipped for this, somebody on the team needs to sort of kind of prod at it and make it happen and have those maybe uncomfortable conversations, because it might be that person at the top that doesn't have the competencies to lead really well. So how do you have those conversations, right?
Right. So you're having the one-on-ones with the folks who are in a different location, who on the team. And they will say, well, that would be great if the leader would do that, but they're really not wired that way. And so
it stops.
Right. So is that acceptable? Do you look down at your middle managers and you've got somebody in a role and they're not performing some aspect of the role? And do you just say, well, they're not wired that way, so we're just going to let that ride?
No. That doesn't happen, right? And you take action on that. And so we're sort of starting here with this podcast about talking about leaders taking actions for themselves in order to model the way for the rest of the organization. Because we know that if you walk the talk, if you really lean into the competencies that are important, others will see that and others will do it. Build it and they will follow. And that's really what we expect our leadership teams to do.
Yeah, because if the impact to the organization is if the team isn't going to have the hard conversations, and how does that impact the information they get, right? That's brought to them. How willing and open are the people below going to be? And if they're not tight up at the top, the distance between everyone else and how they have to negotiate their way through getting things done just becomes much, much more difficult.
That's right.
Any additional thoughts there?
No, I think that if you create the space for those conversations to be had, other team leaders within the organizations will do the same. And if you create that space, there's that willingness for people to say, I can't do it. I don't have the tools. I don't have the funds. I don't have the whatever, or my team isn't set up for success. I need more of, and ask for what they need. And I think that's a lot of what we're asking of leaders is to create that space, to do it within their own space, but to create the space and model the way for others below them for strong, cohesive leadership throughout an organization.
Right. And that whole being able to get a coordinated effort, right? If you're not alignment, alignment is the ongoing conversation around heading in the same direction. And when there is a lack of vulnerability, a lack of awareness, everybody just tends to operate where they're comfortable
and siloed.
And the silo is where I'm comfortable. And the silo is, and I can rationalize that because that's what I'm responsible to deliver against. And I don't have to speak outside that. And when that becomes my mindset, our ability to align as a team is fractured because I'm there protecting what I know instead of being open about what I don't know, what I should know, and sharing my perspective of what I see in other areas of the business. Because once we're in a silo, we stop seeing the things we should sometimes we should notice.
Yeah.
Because it becomes very apparent.
Yeah. And we want the lower leadership levels to be cross-functional in how they're dealing with other areas. And as a leader, when you're staying in your lane, only in your lane, it's difficult for others to see the value of, cross-functionally working with other departments. And that's really critically important. So I think, we say in strategy work, alignment is the silver bullet, right? You can have a great strategy, but if you don't have alignment, it's just not going to go anywhere. But if you have a poor strategy and alignment, you're going to move the needle somewhere. So think about alignment from a leadership perspective, and think about it and how much it's going to positively impact your strategy. That is a silver bullet.
Well, and I think people underestimate alignment, thinking of it as it's just a communications kind of piece of a strategy, right? How are we gonna communicate this? How are we gonna cascade this down? And that's just step one, right? That's just like the cascading is the awareness level, the getting people their heads around what the objectives are, what the strategy is about. But alignment is the ongoing conversations and decisions that hold the line around what the target is. And that's really easy to lose the plot over time. And especially if you're remote and you're not working together proximity wise, right? That it becomes that much more of a challenge because you're not connected to have the conversations.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So figuring out and measuring it. So we talked a little bit about if we're going to do leadership at the top, how do we know, how do we find those gaps? What are those gaps?
Yeah.
Right. How are we identifying those? And then how are we really knowing if leaders are actually learning? So thoughts on that?
I think you need to find sort of those leadership competencies that are most important to your team, because there's lots of different competencies, right? But I think to have a 360-degree view of your team in terms of what those competencies are and what people bring is going to be really important. I think in the VUCA world that we're living in now, adaptability has got to be one of them. And how adaptable are the people on your team to the changes that are happening around you?
Yes.
I think is one, a very important one.
Yes.
I think second to that, I think is probably communication.
Yes.
Right. It's a big bucket, right? Everything leads to communication.
That's a very big bucket. Yes.
But, if you, like I said to my future leaders last week, if you think you're communicating enough, communicate more, because you need to over communicate for people to hear, for people to understand, for people to
and it's
buy in.
Not just communicating what you're thinking. It's communicating what you're sensing, what you're feeling, right? What you're worried about, what keeps you up, all of the things, right? It's just the degree of communication of just the objectives is this tiny piece of it. And the aperture needs to be much, much bigger about not only what do I see, what do I feel about what I see, what am I sensing, because that's where you start to surface potential issues, potential misalignment, potential challenges that you didn't expect and how you adapt as you go. And the communication is where you find the adaptive design.
And so one way, I guess, of finding what those, we know what the competencies are, of understanding how people view you in that competency zone is to do a 360 of some sort, where you have your peers have a way of observationally telling you what they see in you.
Well, and not just, and here's the thing about 360s, and let's just talk about how assessments and algorithms and all that stuff has gotten really, really, really good. Thank you, AI.
Yeah.
Like just the whole science around that. But the individual 360 is a great thing. But in the last few years, they're coming out with team 360s. And team 360s are very cool. It's really about how are we assessing a team's performance through the eyes of the team's stakeholders. And so the leadership team is being assessed by the customer, by the supplier, by the employee, so there's a better sense of feedback that they can all own together. And so if you haven't really explored the opportunity of doing a Team 360, I think it's a huge tool to start, because when you do that, you really start having to think about yourselves as a team instead of an individual player on the team. And that kind of helps solidify and close some of those gaps, because how you think about it is how you show up in it.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about, I'm just finance. Right.
That's right. I don't need to have a personality because I'm just finance.
I'm just finance. I'm just running the numbers. Yeah. So.
Now, joking aside for all finance people out there.
Yeah, we love this. We love finance people.
Yeah. But I do, that is true. And also the Team 360 also takes away the feeling of, I'm doing something wrong, or I'm not good in this area, versus the team needs to be, shouldered up and stronger. So it's a great way of allowing those vulnerable conversations to happen around team and sort of take that individual aspect out of it. Right?
Yes.
So if you're having, if as a team you can't have those conversations, this is a much better way of having the conversation. And it's not just, unless you're going to do individual 360s for everybody, right? Or just,
which is hard, right? Because then everybody's rating everybody else.
A time commitment, and
it's a little bit of a circus.
And
yeah. She's having a party. Apparently. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. So measuring and what are you really looking for, not just from the team, but just as how do you know the leadership change is happening, the learning is happening, and what might be some of those leading indicators? And one of the interesting things of a leading indicator that I don't think people think about is language, how things are being talked about. The words that get introduced. Is it a we thing and not a me thing? And do we speak of our other parts of the business like they're distant, or that do I have ownership language when I speak about it? And those are really interesting indicators, because if the conversation, the nature of how we talk about it is actually, so what might be some of those words that, based on who your team is or where you're trying to go, what would you be looking for? What are the stories you'd be looking to tell, and in what context you're telling them? And that's a leading indicator. If we've all stopped saying you guys or us, if the us and them thing goes away and it's a we thing all the time.
That department, not us.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. But do you think then that leadership teams, so they do a 360, they're the competencies, they're having these conversations, they need to determine what those stories should be before, right? So what are you looking for? Yeah. And so taking some time, and time is not something we have a lot of, but if you don't take the time as leaders to spend the time to do this sort of this stuff, it makes it's, I don't know, you need to take the time, right? It is as important as strategy. It's as important as budgets. It's as important as, the next big thing that you're going to be doing, because this is permeating through your organization. And once you get everybody rowing in that same direction, then things will go faster, and things will move faster, and things will be easier. And
you're already having the conversations. Let's be really clear. You're already spending the time. You're just not talking to each other. You're only talking to people that you're connected to, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're having conversations about your frustrations. You're having conversations. It's happening, but is it happening with everyone, right? Is it happening in the right context? Or are you only having those conversations on the side before the meeting or after the meeting or whatever when the team is together?
Mm-hmm.
Those are big indicators too that success is happening when those side conversations are no longer side conversations. That the conversations, the things you need to say, you say to the whole team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't just say to the people that you on the team that you're closest to.
Yeah, yeah, and one of the strongest team norms is that there are no sidebar conversations. I think
No sidebar conversations.
If you have that as a team norm and as your leadership team, if you don't have norms, you should probably think about what those norms are in order to allow for those things to happen, and for people in the moment to say, "Hey, Jen, I saw that you were talking about this after the meeting, or you just came to me to talk to me. Let's talk about this as a group."
Yes. And it's that easy. I know that, it's like you hear it and you go, yeah, of course.
Yeah. But it happens.
You stop somebody in the hall and you're like, God, what was your thought about so-and-so? And then you kind of vent out this thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And for the other person to recognize, why didn't you say that in the moment?
Mm-hmm.
And bring it next time we're together.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of just, it puts a pause on the willingness to do that, right? And everybody starts to go, okay. And that team accountability, that's how it works, right? We have to say it to each other. Like, we all agreed we weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think leadership starts at the top, as we know, which we've, a mantra that we've always sang. But what we're finding more and more these days is that leaders are forgetting about themselves as leaders and the competencies and the development that they need. And they're sort of pushing the development dollars downward, which is great. And we want you not
keep doing that.
Don't stop doing that. But take some time as a team and think about the impact that you have on the organization and what people are looking for from you as a team.
Right. Because what'll happen is the investment dollars you make in the middle will have limited impact, if any impact, if you're not also invested at the top, because this top will inadvertently not recognize when change comes from the middle and can thwart it because they aren't bought in or in step with what the long range design and effort is really about.
Right. And when you're asking your leaders to change and to do these different leadership qualities that you're asking them to learn and project, if it's sort of not in tune with you as a leadership team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that willingness, the interpersonal risk you have to take at the top, right? You've gotten there, you're feeling secure, or maybe you're not, you're silently terrified.
Imposters.
Whatever's happening. The sooner you get your arms around that and hold on to that and go, okay, I've got to work on myself first. And what do I know that I'm doing that creates lack of team, that holds me in a secure place, as opposed to creating the level of discomfort that says I'm learning, that says I am willing to take both a performance risk and an interpersonal risk to do something differently, to fundamentally shift how I'm willing to engage with not only my directs, but my peers. That's how you know you're moving forward from a learning perspective, is there is a level of vulnerability there.
Absolutely.
And it's not the imposter kind. It's the full on, oh crap, this makes me uncomfortable.
But I need to say it and I need to learn from it, right?
Yeah.
We always talk about, fail fast and learn from your mistakes. And so it's no different from leaders, right? We practice what you preach to your people underneath. So,
and they can see it and they can see it and they can tell if you are putting it in there or not putting it in there, because leaders are in a way they have to learn out loud because they are visible. And if you think you're fooling them, that you're masquerading as, yes, I'm a learning leader, they'll know. They know.
And then they won't take their leadership training or any sort of training seriously.
Right. Because you are sending the message it's not important.
That's right. So we're going to stop there because we don't want anybody to send a message that it's not important. I think we sort of ranted on about this enough. we want everybody to sort of step away and think about themselves and team at the higher level, because it begins there. So this is Sandi and Jen talking to you from New York,
where there's a lot of trash emptying and party and ice collecting
Oh,
happening. So
gosh.
thanks for sticking with us through that.
All right, good luck with it, and we hope to see you again on OT Kung Fu.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. You can check out Sandi's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI consultinginc.ca. And visit Jen's website at own-up.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.